Today we're going to learn how to do this beautiful cast on that is very similar to the tubular cast on, but this is a much easier alternative to that tubular cast on, but still gives it that beautiful rolled over edge that we love to see on that tubular cast on. This is a much easier way to do it. I'm going to show you how to do it flat and also how to do it in the round. So let's get started. All right, let's begin first by doing this cast on flat with straight needles. We're going to actually start this cast on with the long tail cast on method. But as we start with this long tail cast on method, we are only going to cast on half the amount of stitches that your pattern calls for, plus 2 for the edge stitches. So if your pattern calls for 20 stitches, you will cast on 10 stitches plus 2. See, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so if your pattern calls for 40 stitches, you would cast on 20 stitches plus 2 for a total of 22, and so forth. All right, now for the very first row, we're going to actually do some more cast on stitches to bring it up to the full amount that you need for your pattern. Our very first stitch is going to start with a slip stitch with our yarn in front, and we're going to slip it purlwise. That's going to be our edge stitch that we're going to start at the beginning of each row. Then we're going to make an additional cast on stitch. So to do that, we're going to bring our right needle all the way to the front and underneath our knitting here and grab this yarn to knit a stitch, bringing it back up underneath. And now we've produced another stitch on our right needle. It's kind of just a looped over stitch. And now we will knit the second stitch that we've casted on previously. So knit 1. Now let's do another one of those additional cast on stitches by bringing your needle all the way to the front and underneath, picking up that yarn, bringing it back underneath and up for additional stitch. Knit the next one, and let's make another one. Underneath, grab that yarn, underneath and up, and knit, make one, knit, make one, knit, make one. Let's do this all the way to the end. We'll end with that knit one, and then the very last stitch we will just knit it. That's going to be our edge stitch. All right, so now we've got the right amount of stitches that we need for our pattern. Now we're going to turn our work, and again we're going to slip that first stitch as if we're going to purl with our yarn in front. Then this next stitch that we had previously knitted on the row before, we are going to knit that stitch. Now this next stitch is one of those additional cast on stitches we created the last row. We are going to purl that stitch. So bring your yarn to the front and purl that stitch. Knit the next one, the one that we had knitted the row before, and purl this next one, our additional cast on from the row before. Knit, purl. That's the one that looks kind of just like a loop over. That's the one we have to purl. And we'll do this to the end of this row. All right, this last stitch we will knit. All right, now we'll turn our work again. And now we're to the point where we can just follow our normal 1-by-1 ribbing that we will going to continue to do for however long you want this ribbing to be. Again, we're going to first, however, start with our edge stitch, slip it purlwise with the yarn in front. Now you can see that this looks more like a knit stitch. So we're going to knit that stitch just like you would with a knit one, purl one. This one looks like it needs to be a purl stitch because it's got that purl bump below. So that one we are going to purl, and we will follow that sequence, knitting this knit stitch below and purling the purl stitch where you see that purl bump. So now we're just kind of into our normal 1-by-1 ribbing, where we knit first and then purl, and we'll do this to the end of this row as well. And with a purl stitch and then that last edge stitch, which will be a knit stitch. Okay? And you can see now when you turn the work of this beautiful edge stitch, and when you get more rows into it, of course, it will become much more defined for your ribbing. And you can continue this for as long as your pattern calls for a ribbing section or for the brim of a hat, and it will be beautiful. Now there is a right side and a wrong side to this ribbing. This here is the right side row. You can see on this side that this is the wrong side row, only because it's a little bit wonky on that very first row. You can see that my ribbing is a little separated here on that first row. So that's how you can identify the wrong side versus the right side when you knit this flat. All right, so now let me show you how to do this in the round. It's a little bit more trickier because we have to do a couple little knit cheats to make it work in the round, but I'll show you each step along the way. All right, now let's do this cast on method in the round. We are going to, again, only cast on half the number of stitches that we need for our project. And we're going to, this time, add just one extra stitch to that number. And we have to make sure it's an odd number of stitches. That's the little tweak that we have to do to in order for this method to work in the round. So for this sample here, I'm going to say that my project needs 72 stitches casted on for, like, say, a hat, and I'm going to cast on half that amount, which is 36, plus 1, which is 37 stitches. Since that is an odd number, that will work. All right, I cast on 37 stitches, and now we will begin with that really second round of cast on stitches where we will make those additional cast on stitches. Now normally when you knit in the round after your cast on row, you would join in the round by making sure your yarn is coming off of your right hand needle, and you would begin knitting stitches on this side. But with this particular cast on, since we only casted on half the number of stitches, I do not have enough stitches to wrap it around my circular needle, so I am going to knit the very first or the second cast on row and my first round, I'm going to knit those flat before I join them in the round. Okay, so let me take my working yarn here, and I will begin my second cast on row by just knitting my first stitch. And now we'll do that, making additional cast on stitch by wrapping our needle underneath, bringing it up, grabbing that yarn, and bringing it back underneath to the top for our additional cast on, just like we did when we did this flat. Then we're going to knit our next stitch, make that additional cast on stitch again, knit, make one, and knit another one, and we will do this all the way to the end of this row, and then we'll go on to the next. All right, I got a couple more stitches left on this row. I am going to do my next knit stitch, and I will make another stitch so I can end now on one knit stitch. All right. Now I am going to still not join in the round. I am going to do my next row flat as well. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that I've got the right side of my knitting on my cast on the right side for knitting in the round. If I join now, I will have the wrong side of the knitting facing outward, and I do not want that. So I am going to turn it again and work the next row flat as well. And this next row, we are going to start by knitting that first stitch. And this is that cast on stitch that we additional cast on stitch that we did in the row below, we are going to purl that stitch just like what it looked like when we did this flat. Now we're going to knit the next one, purl that additional cast on stitch, knit the next, and we will do this till the end of the row as well. All right, nearing the end of this row, I'm going to be purling the stitch, knitting, purling, and let's end with a knit stitch. Okay, so now we are ready to actually join in the round, and we can join now in the round, and that will assure that the right side of our cast on edge is facing outward when we continue to knit in the round. So we're not going to turn our work this time. Now we're going to just leave it as it is. So our working yarn is coming off of our right needle, and we're going to begin stitching the stitches on our left needle, and that's going to join it in the round. But first, let's make sure that our cast on edge is pointing to the center, and that will make sure that we don't have any twisted stitches when we join it in the round. All right, here is now where we're going to not only join in the round, but we're going to get rid of that extra stitch. Remember, we had an odd number of stitches when we cast it on. We want to make sure we have an even number of stitches now to successfully do a 1x1 repeat in the round. So we're going to get rid of that extra stitch. To do that, let's have, again, working yarn is coming off of your right hand needle. We are going to just take this very first stitch from our right needle and slip it over to our left needle. Now here is where you can add your stitch marker. That's going to be our beginning of the round going forward. Now we're going to take this stitch and this next stitch and knit those two together, and that is going to eliminate that extra stitch, and we'll have an even number of stitches, which is what we want for the 1x1 ribbing. All right, now we can just do that normal 1x1 ribbing pattern by purling the purl stitch that you see here, knitting the V stitch that you see here, just like you would with a regular ribbing, purling, knit, purl, and knit. And you can continue on your way with that normal 1x1 and do this for as long as your desired length is for that ribbing. Now you can see that I've got the right side facing me, which looks like this, and we can continue on our way. I'm going to finish this row around, and actually I'm going to do a couple rounds, and I'm going to show you a little tidying up technique you can do at the start of your round to make it look seamless. Now that I've knitted a few more rounds, you can really see that beautiful edging to our ribbing taking shape. Now I want to just show you one little thing that you can do, optional, if you want to tidy things up a little bit. As you recall, we knitted 2 rounds flat before we joined in the round, and that can sometimes create a little bit of a gap in the very beginning of your row. So you can see here that the start of this round, where I've got my stitch marker here, is a little wonky. We've got kind of an extra stitch in here that we knitted 2 together to fix that. We didn't join in the round right away, so there's a little gap there. So let's just tidy that up just a little bit to make it look a little nicer. So we've got our tail here, and we're going to use that to just do a stitch or 2 to close up that gap. So I threaded my tail onto a darning needle here, and now we're just going to bring this yarn over, or actually underneath, this left leg of this very first stitch of the beginning of our round. So I'm just going to bring it under that left leg, bring that yarn through, and that's going to kind of tuck those 2 pieces together. And then since I've got kind of this bulky stitch, this knit 2 together that I did, I want to kind of tuck that more towards the back. So now I'm going to also pick up the stitch. Actually, I'm going to do it from the top down and go to the back of that left leg over on this knit column. And that will kind of tuck that bulky stitch to the back, okay? And that just makes for a little cleaner start to the round. Then when you get to the back, your tail on here, then you can just nicely weave in your end when you are ready, however way you like to do that, to make sure that that end is nicely secure in there and you can weave that together, okay? Or I'll weave that end in. So that is how you do this cast on in the round. Also, I've shown you how to do it flat. A beautiful stitch, a great, easier alternative to that tubular cast on. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe so you can receive all sorts of knitting tutorials about knitting tips and techniques, fun new stitches, and creative patterns. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy knitting.